What's good, friends? Welcome into Fantasy Focus Football alongside Stephania Bell and Field Yates. My name is Daniel Dopp, and we have a huge show. Oh, wait, sorry. We just had another block kick that happened this week. It just came in now across the waiver wire.
Hey. Wow. What
a lot of things happened in week 3. Seriously.
It's insane.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, we're going to dive into a bunch of different things today. We got our Monday Morning Blitz recapping a bunch of stuff that happened. We're going to give you our biggest takeaways, as well as I think we're far enough into the season, we can start deciding whether or not things are trends or not trends. I mean, 3 weeks is a big enough sample size. So we'll dive into some studs and duds as well, but I think we need to kick this thing off the right way. Because now that Mike Clay's not here, let's talk about the Philadelphia Eagles.
Hey,
what am I
win,
saying?
They're so resilient. God, 19 points down. They don't blink a bit. They
Not at all.
Come back and winning in miraculous fashion by 7 points.
Dude.
I mean, listen, we were talking before the show about the special teams play. Their special teams play was phenomenal.
Yeah. Unbelievable.
Phenomenal.
Yep.
Yes.
They certainly did get everything the Rams could handle. The Rams give them everything they can handle, I should say, and yet the Eagles still find a way to win their 19th game in 20 tries. I believe the only game the Eagles have lost in their last 20 is a game in which Jalen Hurts left early due to injuries.
Oh, really?
Safe to say this team is a well-oiled machine, and they have a great test in Week 4 against the Buccaneers, who are also 3-0.
Yeah, he dominated in this one. One of the things that we had said is like, maybe we can get the pass catchers involved finally in this one.
AJ Brown?
Well, guess
Hi,
what?
we see you.
Jalen Hurts dominated one, by the way. He was still quarterback 2 on the week so far. He'll probably be quarterback 4 by the time we get through Monday Night Football, obviously. But
Jared Goff.
Jared
Who's
Goff
their
and
backup
Lamar
quarterback
Jackson.
now? Oh, sorry. Lamar, I forgot about
That's right. Yeah, Lamar Jackson's the other one. However, it wasn't just being able to him utilizing his legs. He found the end zone 3 times with his arm, being able to find A.J. Brown, finally unlocked that 10 targets, 6 catches for 109 yards and a touchdown. Devontae Smith found the end zone as well. This is why I said last week, I'm not panicked about Eagles wide receivers. You go through these spells. They're such a run-heavy team field. This isn't going to happen week in and week out, but this is what they can give you when they are firing on all cylinders.
Well, there is one good thing that takes place for the pass catchers when Saquon Barkley dominates, which is that eventually defenses say, we're going to have to shift our balance. And Saquon Barkley is seeing more 8-man boxes than any other back in the NFL right now. So that should, in theory, open up more opportunities for these pass catchers to have big days. It took a little while to get going. Philly just came out of this game kind of methodical, a little bit stuck in the mud. It was a quiet first half for Philadelphia, kind of across the board.
Yep.
It's a 60-minute game, though, and A.J. Brown really took over in the second half. It was a reminder
big,
of
bad
why.
man.
Yeah, he actually said it after the game, basically like, not trying to toot my own horn too much, but basically like good things happen when you throw the ball my way. They certainly did, as he was incredible yesterday. A.J. Brown performed every bit like the player that the Eagles paid, not just a first-round pick to acquire, but in the second contract they gave him $33 million per year. He was amazing.
He was amazing. Devontae Smith, like I said, 9 targets, 8 catches for 60 yards, also finds the end zone.
It was great. Yep.
It did kind of come at the expense of Saquon Barkley. Saquon fell under 10 fantasy points, unfortunately, in this one.
Well, the Rams sold out for him, right?
That's
the Rams
absolutely
sold out,
right.
The Rams won that battle.
Wouldn't you also? Like, I would stop Saquon first.
Shout out to Sal Palantonio, tight end whisperer. If you watch Fantasy Football Now, he said could be a Dallas Goedert game, and we saw Dallas Goedert, who had missed the week before with a knee injury. Yeah. We felt good about him coming into the game, and he proved that he was right there for Jalen Hurts.
He found the end zone for the Eagles, I believe, first score of the game. They kind of got things rolling there. So a huge, huge win for the Eagles. They are now 3-0. In some ways, they kind of needed a game like that to be reminded that they can win in multiple ways. And also, like, other teams are going to probably say to themselves a little bit of, if we can do to the Eagles what the Rams did in the first half, maybe we can find a way to not just make so many second half errors like the Rams did, and we can try to win this game. But like, I think teams are having to decide right now, would you rather lose by Saquon Barkley going nuts or Jalen Hurts having a remarkable passing day? I think with a moment of truth serum, a lot of defensive coordinators are saying we're more comfortable with Jalen Hurts picking us apart.
Yep.
The Rams figured out what the downside of that decision is, but a good day for the Eagles passing offense. They were great. Again, they play the Bucs next week, so if the Bucs can move the ball like they have at times this year, could mean a lot more of A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith in week 4.
Yeah, a lot of offense, which was very exciting for us in the Eagles. Let's talk about another game that I thought there was going to be a lot of offense for, and there kind of was, but not in the way that we had expected at Field Yates. I'm unfortunately talking about the Dallas Cowboys and Chicago Bears. CeeDee Lamb unfortunately leaves early in this one. Can we talk about that as well?
Takeaways?
Oh my gosh, you're right. This is a thing. We just talked about this. We're working our way around. I thought we were sharing a note again. So why don't we give one of yours and then we'll dive into it.
If we redrafted today for the rest of the season, Jonathon Taylor is going at worst 3rd overall. He might go 1st overall.
Unbelievable.
You know what he looks like? He looks like the guy
Jonathon
that
Taylor?
I drafted 1st overall in the War Room League a few years ago that I thought was going to win me my league.
Yeah.
And then he had an injury that took him out for the rest of the season. He is now playing like that guy again, and the opportunities are there for him as well.
Yeah, other options to consider for number 1 overall, of course, include Bijan Robinson and Christian McCaffrey, Jahmyr Gibbs, pending Monday Night Football, Puka Nacua. We'll talk about him more in a little bit. But Jonathon Taylor is first in running back fantasy points at exactly 75 for the season. That's 25 per game. He had 3 touchdowns yesterday. He had 20 opportunities. The Colts offense has punted once in 3 games. Once. And I know that the Titans didn't play like it yesterday. It's a pretty good defense.
Yes.
The Titans actually gave the Rams some fits when they played a couple of weeks ago. Like, the Titans have been better defensively than what they showed yesterday, but Taylor has been amazing. This run scheme is terrific. The fact that Daniel Jones can run as well changes the geometry of how defenses can approach the Colts running game. He's been great. We obviously know Jonathon Taylor is a major talent. He was the face of fantasy football just a few years ago. But for a guy that didn't get that much preseason hype, not like we ignored Jonathon Taylor, but we were so focused in on that core 4 to 5 players at the very top and 4 to 5 running backs, including Ashton Genty and Christian McCaffrey. It turns out there was no room whatsoever for Ashton Genty in that conversation, and there should have been plenty of room for Jonathon Taylor. The Colts play the Rams next weekend, but he has been nothing short of brilliant.
He's been fantastic. One just little fun fact off what you mentioned about the punt. We hadn't seen the Colts punter, so we weren't sure if he still played for the team. 1 combined punt and turnover for the Colts through 3 games. That record has held up since 1950.
Wow.
So that is the first time
75
since
years.
1950 that a team's gone through 3 games with 1 turnover. That's crazy.
It is
Think
crazy.
of how many turnovers we saw in Sunday Night Football.
Just this week alone.
Yes. So a lot of those, that's for sure.
So that means offense on the field. That means long drives. That means
Yep.
great for fantasy points and sustained drives with Jonathon Taylor. Awesome.
I think Daniel Jones also has become a set it and forget it quarterback. Like with what you had just said, the relationship between how they're utilizing the quarterback
More on that, but
and the running back. We'll dive in a little bit later. All right, good to know that we're on the same page, Field. Stephania, how about you? Give us a takeaway that you had from week 3.
Why do I have to be the downer? But
Well,
I am. I pick
you can go
them.
whatever
I
order
pick
you
them,
want.
right?
Yeah,
No,
yeah.
I know. I pick them, and so the things that stand out to me is always when there's a big injury, and there was maybe nothing bigger than James Conner going down yesterday. So the Cardinals are in trouble. In general, the Cardinals had started strong. They were 2-0 coming into yesterday's game against San Francisco. And then James Conner, who we talked about before the season as like the guy that you want to draft because he's just been so consistent, quietly consistent, a preferred target for Kyler Murray out there, and he's been on the field. I mean, since his early in his career health issues, he's been incredibly durable. Then, unfortunately, gets caught up with this nasty-looking twisting injury with a defender landing on his ankle. You knew immediately when you see everybody come on the field, you see the cart come out, and he looked pretty dejected, and now reports that it was a serious ankle injury. Listen, we knew it was serious by everything that happened, but his knee was so torqued that it could have been a knee, could have been an ankle, could have been both. Ankle injury, apparently, that will require surgery, and that's all we know at this point. But I would say you need to make other plans.
Yeah,
Next
Adam
man up.
Schefter
James
reporting
Conner.
that it's going to be a season-ending ankle injury for him.
Those other plans could be Trey Benson.
They will
Right,
be.
and that was if you're going to take if you're going to spin it forward to something positive, is that Trey Benson looked the part. Trey Benson very sad last night talking about how James Conner has mentored him, and he certainly had time to do that because we haven't seen Trey Benson have a role, but it felt like he could step we've talked about him being a clear insurance back where there are so few of those.
Yeah.
That is what Trey Benson will be, and he will be there to step up and be the number one back. My other takeaway from that game, Marvin Harrison Jr., wow, just a disappointment. And part of that, listen, he had 3 catches for 44 yards. He was targeted 6 times. One was just this horrible drop. I almost wanted to go out and give him a hug because he was wide open. If he catches that ball, he turns and it's a score for him. I mean, we all know I'm a 49ers fan, so I didn't really. I wanted to give him a hug for thank you for not doing
catching
that.
it, but also I feel bad for you.
And then I watched him in his press conference with the reporters after the game, and he's not hiding from it, but he just seemed completely dejected, and you wonder, is that it's going to get in his head? It's not been great, and I feel like this is a big pivotal point for Marvin Harrison Jr. Does he get a fire under him and this changes? They need him. Or is he just going to sort of wither into a lack of confidence?
Yeah, I can't speak to that part. I can just speak to the fact that he's got a pedestrian target share. He has been average on tape for a year and 3 games now.
Yep.
And there's zero chemistry between him and his quarterback. So for all the name value, he is not a lineup lock in week 4.
Who supposedly they worked out in the offseason and talked about, but
I know.
But it was Marvin Harrison Jr. who brought it up, who said that he felt like it had enhanced their chemistry and relationship. And listen, when you've only been there 1 year, I'm at least going to believe that that's a possibility, but I'm not seeing it.
I just don't think that Marvin Harrison Jr. is going to be who we thought he was. Yeah, I think that's where we're at. Because I've watched
going down Kyle Pitts' path.
Yeah.
I know that people will say he had the 1,000 yards as a rookie. That's great. Absolutely clear. I'm talking about years 2 through at least 4 with Kyle Pitts. He's been a little better in year 5. That's also because tight end stinks in fantasy. But yeah, it's been a very inauspicious start for Marvin.
I just remember that there was a time with Kyler Murray where they had DeAndre Hopkins and Hollywood Brown.
Yep.
And Kyler Murray force-fed Hollywood Brown. He was wide receiver 1 in targets. And then as soon as DeAndre Hopkins came back, DeAndre Hopkins put up a fantastic second half of the season. We've watched him be able to get his number 1 wide receiver involved. Things are just not going well.
Bottom line, Marvin Harrison Jr. is in boomer bust territory.
It feels not great, unfortunately. All right, now I'm going to do my second one. So sorry for the false start on that one. There were a lot of penalties on me. But CeeDee Lamb, Stephania, I feel like I have to start with you with this one, unfortunately. CeeDee Lamb exit early. And then that opened up a bunch of opportunities for other people in this Cowboys passing game. But what can you tell us about CeeDee Lamb knowing that he left so early in the game?
Yeah, it was weird. It was on a running play.
Yeah.
Which you're not expecting from CeeDee Lamb. And then he got caught, a defender coming in, and it was just a bad luck play. It was not, somebody had... So I didn't see it when it initially happened and somebody thrown out the hip drop tackle thing. I watched it. It was not. It was just, but what I will say is the mechanism of injury was very similar to what you see with a hip drop tackle, which is why those things are banned. But he got his ankle twisted. So basically the foot is pointing outwards relative to the lower leg. So a big twisting injury on his ankle. But luckily it appears just, the force vectors being what they are. Sometimes that happens. Devastating injury could be season ending. He actually went out there and tried to play at the start of the second quarter. He went out for 1 snap. No, it was not pretty. He couldn't put weight through it. He came off the field. But after the game, he was saying that he thinks he'll be back this week. That remains to be seen. Sometimes these things are worse the next day. But the bottom line is he escaped, it appears, something that could have been far more serious.
Yeah, when he came off the field, he was just shaking his head very clearly, nope. We're not gonna do this. And we all as fantasy managers should appreciate that. Don't go out there and exacerbate it and make it worse, right? Dallas Cowboys probably would have loved to be able to have him out there on Sunday. Even though Jake Ferguson and George Pickens turned in great games for us in fantasy, Cowboys really needed CeeDee out there.
Yeah, Ferguson just an absolute target monster right
Unbelievable.
now. He has been unbelievable over the past the first 3 games of the season, even though he has not scored a touchdown since at least the beginning of last year. The volume is so good at the position that we are so desperate for. The Cowboys play next Sunday night against the Green Bay Packers. So, of course, Dak Prescott's outlook will be impacted not just by the potential lack of CeeDee Lamb, but also the fact that it's one of the toughest defenses in the entire league to face.
If he thought he was under duress against the Chicago Bears, wait until he plays Green Bay next week.
The Bears came to play, though.
They sure did. I'm going to save my Bears talk for a little later in the show because they had some fun.
Yeah, they sure did. My next takeaway is the door is open, but I'm not sure how far open it actually is for Treyveyon Henderson. So, of course, Patriots
What did it take for the door to open, Field?
Ramondre Stevenson, 2 lost fumbles yesterday, including you're such an empath.
I know. And
it's amazing.
I know.
Yeah.
Until I look at my fantasy score.
I know.
And
then you're like,
I mean, he just, Ramondre puts the ball on the ground, 2 gigantic errors. As we know, Ramondre Stevenson. Right at the goal line. Yeah, right there. Bad. The Patriots actually had 2 turnovers inside the 5-yard line. Yeah. According to our stats and information group, I think this is the first time the Patriots have done that in the same game in like 58 years. So the Patriots, somehow the Patriots managed to lose that game. It just mind-blowing. But Ramondre Stevenson puts the ball on the ground. Again, I've said Ramondre played better in week 2 than any other Patriots running back has played this regular season. I thought he earned the start yesterday. Unfortunately for Ramondre Stevenson, fumbling has been one of his real vulnerabilities in the NFL. Yep. So he fumbles twice. Then Antonio Gibson also fumbles. He kind of became that next man up for the Patriots. So the Patriots, after those 3 combined fumbles, had a total of 37 offensive snaps. Of those 37, here's the breakdown. Stevenson played 5 more snaps, and he had 0 rushing attempts.
Okay.
Gibson played 6 more snaps. He had 2 rushing attempts. Treyveyon Henderson played 26 offensive snaps. That's a good number. Basically 2 out of 3. He had 9 rushing attempts. That's also good. So on paper, you think to yourself, all right, that means that it's time for Treyveyon Henderson to become the guy in the Patriots backfield in what feels like a good matchup next week against Carolina. The question I have, though, is after the game, Mike Vrabel talked about how they need Ramondre Stevenson. Is this going to be one of those where during the game you yank the veteran and then 7 days later he's back on the field and still starting? My gut tells me yes, but for those of us that have a lot of stock of Treyveyon Henderson, it wasn't hurt yesterday by the fact that the 2 guys who are either playing ahead of him, clearly in the case of Stevenson, or potentially ahead of him in Gibson, both put the ball on the ground because there is nothing that drives a coach up the wall more than a running back putting the ball on the ground from a fumble. So maybe a little bit of a stock boost for Treyveyon Henderson. I'm still a little bit cautious going into next week.
Mike Vrabel can go suck a butt for a while, is all I'm going to say. Honestly, you're telling me that it takes 2 fumbles from Ramondre Stevenson, and even then, we're not even going to get the young guy we just drafted with the 2nd-round pick. It's then got to go to Antonio Gibson, and then he's got to put the ball on the ground before we even get the rookie out there. It feels like they don't want to play him. And then after the game to talk about how they need Ramondre Stevenson?
Surprise.
No, Mike Vrabel. No.
Yeah. I'm trying to cool my head a little bit on this one.
To be okay.
Stephania, you're too metered for this right now. This is an emotional game.
Listen, I'm all about the fantasy points from Treyveyon. I don't want Ramondre. I know. Let's all be nice to Ramondre.
Okay.
People going out there.
Be nice, but also be nice.
But we're happy if Treyveyon Henderson is starting and carrying the ball a lot for us.
14 opportunities yesterday for Henderson. He ended up with 7.7 fantasy points. What's next for you, Stephania?
Why can't we have nice things in the Bay Area?
That's a great question.
Why can't my team stay healthy? I'm wearing my red. Very proud of my 49ers for pulling off that win. Separate statement.
Okay.
Why is no one healthy in San Francisco? Why does this incredible pass rusher that we have, Nick Bosa, who is responsible for us just having this electric defense under Robert Saleh, who's revitalized the defense there? I mean, they are fired up. He is extracting the best play from a defensive group that sometimes people question. But Nick Bosa, we all know about his speed. We all know about what he can do to change defense. He bobbles his right knee, and my immediate thought was he was making a run. You know, he's rushing the passer, and his right leg got a little bit out in front of him. You just see this little bobble, like a little wobble. Yeah. Well, that often looks like an ACL injury. That's the mechanism. The foot plants, the knee bobbles. Now, he left the game. He didn't return. In fact, he's walking. He's looking up in the stands. Don't know if it was family, for whoever, and he gives a thumbs down. Not what you want to see when you're watching at home. But after the game, Kyle Shanahan said they did not think it was his ACL. but that he's going for more testing today. So, one hopes that was not the result of that injury. But I just remind people, sometimes we get fooled. Sometimes people do tear their ACL, and it doesn't appear to be that way based on early testing. So stand by on the Nick Bosa health.
Okay. What about you on? Oh, go ahead. I was going to say the other wide.
No.
You got a bunch of names, unfortunately.
That was the new one to add. Brock Purdy doing better. We're happy about that. But Mac Jones got the start yesterday. Mac Jones limping in the fourth quarter, wearing a brace on his left knee. Totally stoic performance, gets them through that final drive to the win. Mac Jones is banged up. Juwan Jennings, ankle and shoulder injuries that kept him out. Some people surprised. I felt like he had too many injuries. They didn't want to put him on the field because they didn't want one of them to turn major. But there is one bright spot. Christian McCaffrey, who is number 3 this week so far as running back scoring in fantasy points, number 2 on the season, and knock on whatever wood I can find, Christian McCaffrey still healthy.
It's been amazing.
I think there were 2 bright spots. I mean, I thought CMC was great, but I also want to give a little props to Ricky Pearsall, second 100-yard receiving game to start the season.
He was awesome as well. Yeah, I mean, and we can't say enough good things about Christian McCaffrey. All the detractors during the season. I understood the detractors who were concerned about the health because it certainly can happen, and we're only 1/6 of the way through the season, so we got a long ways to go. But it felt like there was a second faction, which was just he's not the same level of player anymore, and he's just an unbelievably remarkable, from my perspective, the greatest receiving running back in the history of professional football. And we play PPR scoring. He had 10 more catches yesterday.
Yep.
All right, my next takeaway. Jordan Mason absolutely crushed in a super weird game in which the Vikings defense outscored the Bengals offense.
Yeah, the Vikings defense, I believe, going into Monday Night Football is tied for the 3rd most points.
I don't even mean fantasy points. I mean actual points on the field. They just scored more points.
Amazing.
It was crazy.
Yeah.
Jordan Mason looked the part, though. He obviously got the start with Aaron Jones on IR, found the end zone twice, looked like the guy that we talked like he was going to be. Unfortunately, didn't get involved in the passing game. Yeah. But he didn't need to because they were up by like 40 points the whole game.
Yeah, because there's a part of me that saw the box score at first and was like, because I was wondering how much passing game involvement. He obviously looked great when we were watching him rush, and I'm like, wait, 0? Like none? And you could say to yourself, that might be a bit of a red flag going forward. I do wonder if a little bit of that is just a quirky game flow, right?
Although we never were counting on him for being much involved in the passing
game. We were just
hoping.
Our eyes were open like, if he can get
like a couple.
Yeah,
I mean, seriously, like if he gets 2 to 3 catches a game, that's a season-altering outlook for this player. So the fact that he got none, I'm going to chalk up a little bit to the fact that this game was just so bizarre.
I was super pumped that TJ Hawkinson was able to rebound here. I was not feeling great about the tight end position. We needed something there, so that felt really good. Do you want to save the Bengals talk for later in the show, or do you want to talk about it?
We can do that
all right,
a little bit later.
That.
But yeah,
we got plenty of things to talk about.
I think that's mostly a burn the tape game for Cincinnati. Because
I was going to say that was my next takeaway was the Bengals played like trash.
It was
it was trash. The Bengals' largest margin of defeat, 38 points in franchise history. Yeah. That's hard to do.
Yeah.
Okay. Jake Browning looked terrible. 5.9 fantasy points, 19 of 27 for 140. 1 touchdown, 2 picks. One of those turned into a pick 6 by the Vikings defense that you were talking about. Jamar Chase, 5 for 50 receiving. Still leads the team in targets because, but awful. Not his fault, really. Just sputtering offense. I was just going to say he fumbled. Ball security was terrible. Chase Brown, Jamar Chase's fumble got turned over. Chase Brown also fumbled, but he recovered it. 10 carries for 3 yards. That seems wrong.
Bad.
I mean, I am not trying to poke the bear, Daniel, but obviously you were a Chase Brown advocate coming into the season. It's just been really disappointing.
I thought there would be more pass catching. I thought there would be more pass catching to offset the efficiency. He had 4 catches,
but 17 yards.
Not enough.
Right now, they just the difference from what we were expecting. Now, granted, the Vikings defense looked great, and they got some. They had their pass rush back, but still, I was disappointed. I thought Jake Browning would look better in this game.
It's funny, as I went on last night to check on Pro Football Reference, where 10 carries for 3 yards ranks in terms of fewest. Hold on, bear with me for a second. Fewest rushing yards in a game in which a player had at least 10 rushing attempts. I think the NFL scored rushing yards and sack yards for quarterbacks differently back then.
Okay.
Because I went, and it turns out that the fewest rushing yards, this is not a joke here, with 10 or more rushing attempts. You want to guess?
I was going to say it was like going to be somebody like that you would never think, but like Tom Brady for like taking a bunch of knees. And
Oh, that's a great point.
Nice.
I mean,
Yeah.
so I would say 10 for
But he would never
10
rush
for
10
one.
times.
10 for 1?
Yeah.
What's your guess?
It would be negative yards, but I don't know. It's going to end up with negative yards if they had
What do you
10
think?
carries.
What do you
10
think?
for -2.
Yeah, because it's not 10 for 3. The answer is 10 rushes for negative 68 yards by Sid Luckman.
What?
Negative 68.
My only
We're like -2.
Yeah,
0.
I really thought, I was like, maybe 3 is the fewest. So they must have scored, as you guys may know,
Yeah.
college football, when
I
a
was just gonna
quarterback
say.
takes a sack,
Yeah.
if it's a 9-yard sack, he gets a rushing attempt for negative 9 yards. So
Sid.
maybe back in the day they scored it differently, but I was not expecting the number to be negative 68.
That is really bad. Let me ask you one question, and then we'll move on from this Bengals offense. But it was completely uninspiring with Jake Brown under center. They had
chalking
5
that up.
fumbles. They had 3 of them that were lost. They had 2 interceptions. When you talk about all that, it just felt like this was just a week to throw out.
I'm so
I don't think
fired.
it's going to be this bad.
I don't think so either.
By the way, producer Tyler sends in our chat, like, the GIF with the little.
The house on fire with the dog in it. And it's like, everything's fine, guys. Everything's
Poor
fine. I
Tyler.
felt so
poor
bad for
Tyler,
Tyler.
man.
That was
hard
tough.
to be a fan.
It was a lesson in Murphy's Law is what that Bengals game was. Everything that could go wrong did go wrong for Cincinnati.
Rooting for Cincinnati yesterday was sort of like having Brian Thomas Jr. and or Drake London in your lineup yesterday. Let's talk about some wide receivers, the good and the bad. As Drake London in what felt like a total smash spot.
I couldn't even watch it.
Carolina Panthers, one of the worst defenses in the league to the first 2 weeks. Michael Penix Jr. was a pick that I had as a top 15 top 15 quarterback in a streaming
Started
option
him.
this week. Yeah, I mean, on paper it seemed like a reasonable
did.
call.
Great matchup.
Yeah, and
course.
Drake London doesn't even have 10 fantasy points yesterday. He is out-targeted by Darnell Mooney. Brian Thomas Jr. did have a big play late in the game for Jacksonville, but under 10 fantasy points. They're 2-1 right now, so there was no talk after the game about body language or drops, but there was way too many drops from Jacksonville yesterday in a really ugly game against the Texans, which they end up winning again 17-10. That's important there, but another uninspiring day for Brian Thomas Jr. Drake London was not great. We haven't talked about him as much because there have been other players who were drafted either right ahead of him or even a few spots ahead of him, but have had dud weeks as well. Those 2 guys were tough. Brian Thomas Jr. will be low in my rankings next week. They play against Stephania's 49ers. Positive side here. A couple of wide receivers that really bounced back. We talked about A.J. Brown already. Despite a late fumble that ended up preventing them from tying the game, Nico Collins was awesome yesterday.
Yep.
Nico goes up over 100 yards.
The only
He had
one
a
that was
touchdown.
awesome.
Yeah, and for all the troubles that the Texans are facing right now, and the issues are very deep-rooted. They have just a disaster offensive line play. They have no running game. This is being a bit reductive. We're simplifying a little bit, but we're saying out loud, like, hey, when you're struggling this much, pepper number 12, your best player by far. They did that yesterday, so credit where it's due to Nick Kelly, their offensive coordinator, for leaning into Nico Collins. They play the Titans this upcoming weekend. The Titans yesterday were shredded by the Colts. L'Jarius Sneed's been really an up-and-down player at best since they acquired him via trade last year, so potentially the Nico Collins momentum carries into week 4, but he was great yesterday, again, putting that fumble late aside.
All right. How about, Stephania, you got another one you want to give to us?
I've got one more.
All right, I got one. We all got one more, so why don't you lead us off?
Okay. The rise of Cam Scatterboo.
That's right.
He is here to stay. Look, I've been loving on Cam Scatterboo since before the season began. I've said out loud that I felt like he was going to overtake Tyrone Tracy. This is not the way we wanted it to happen. Yeah. Tyrone Tracy goes out of the game in the first quarter yesterday with a big hit to his shoulder. Looked awful. Didn't come back, and you never want to see that be a catalyst. Yeah. But we had seen Cam Scatterboo do some things in week 2 that made us think maybe they were going to lean into more, and then they were forced to last night. 10 for 60 with 1 rushing touchdown. I mean, it's just, you know how some guys you just want to watch them play because they just look different. I mean, it's not pretty. The running isn't pretty, but it's like, I'm going to bowl you over. And it's interesting because, we're chatting in the war room as we do. And I, talking with Booger McFarland, he's like, Stephania, that kind of play doesn't earn you like a long career in the NFL because he is just so physical
Battering ram,
and
yeah.
a battering
A wrecking
ram, and
ball.
you do worry that that's going to come back to haunt him. But I'm going to ride this wave right now because 6 catches for 61 yards, and when he got close to the end zone, they gave him, the opportunity to get it. Listen, I am all about Cam Scatterboo.
Can I ask, Field, he went to Arizona State. Is that
He
accurate?
started at Sacramento State and then
Okay.
he went to Arizona State.
Did he have a lot of touches? Like, does he have a lot of touches on his body coming into the NFL?
He does definitely has a lot of tread in the tires.
Okay.
Yes. It's interesting though. What's really I think the most interesting part of this entire thing from last night is that 9 of the first 13 snaps last night by the Giants offense were carries or targets for Tyrone Tracy Jr. It seemed like their plans were for this to be the Tyrone Tracy show last night.
Yeah.
So injuries can obviously change the complexion of an offense in a hurry. And if this injury is as serious as it seemed, and he was in a lot of pain on the Chiefs sideline right away, then Scatterboo is definitely going to be trending up in a hurry. I don't know how much information we'll get on the Tyrone Tracy injury today, but that backfield definitely looks a whole lot different.
Here's what it felt like to me, because Tyrone Tracy's quick, and they are just completely different style of players. And I felt like their goal was like, we're going to move this. We're going to move through the Chiefs quickly here and not force it through the air. And that's where Tyrone Tracy was valuable. But, I still think they probably would have gone to Scatterboo later, especially if it was like, we got to try and beat them down. That's what he does. He runs over people. But I like it.
That's the empath in you again. Their goals for last night. I'm not sure I saw any goals, but yeah.
Halftime, the score was like 9-6, wasn't it?
It was.
Besides
like
survival.
Halftime, yes.
It was
I felt
ugly.
like last night was one of those
That
games
was
where by
ugly
the
football, by the way.
It was. When you get to halftime and the score is 9-6, you say to yourself, do I really have to stay up for the second half?
But
we
you
do
did.
because everyone needs it. This is what our job is. But man, it did not feel good. Yeah. Stephania, you talked about how the backfield felt like there was a change going on. Backfield also that is going through some changes right now is the Los Angeles Chargers. Omarion Hampton had a breakout game. Unfortunately, it came at the expense of Najee Harris. Why don't you set up the Najee injury first, and then we'll talk about how Hampton crushed.
Yeah, Najee lined up in the backfield as the ball was snapped. And if you watch the replay, what you really should do is watch it from the beginning of before the ball was snapped, because you see him standing.
Or don't watch it.
I let you watch the replays for me. I get queasy at stuff like this.
Okay, I don't think, to me, this is not like the James Conner twisting injury, but if you want to see what is classic for an Achilles injury, I mean, Austin Eckler, Najee Harris, if you put them side by side, even though they were doing very different things, it was the same motion. They do a step back lunge. A foot comes behind them, and so they're in the lunge position, which puts the Achilles on maximum stretch. And then it's like you get into that position. Think of how many times you've done that, like a step back to push off and go forward. So you step back and your heels to the ground, calf and Achilles on maximum stretch, and then you forcefully push off. So you're going from full length to max contraction, and the Achilles fails. That's where the injury happens. And I can identify it so quickly because the player just goes to the ground. They have nothing. They have no push off. They're trying to push off, and then they fall flat. That's what happened to Najee Harris. The cart comes out for him. He leaves. It was confirmed that it was an Achilles injury, and they haven't talked about the severity, et cetera. But we know from experience that those are usually, it's one of those kind of like ACL. You never really hear about partial. Yeah, they can happen. It's usually either like it's gone or you didn't have the injury in the first place. But I would plan on it being Omarion Hampton for fantasy purposes, Omarion Hampton going forward.
Najee Harris, unfortunately, had a tough off season, and so we're going to wish him the best in getting back to full health here. But Field, silver lining, if we're going to look at it, Omarion Hampton absolutely crushed as the number one running back, 19 carries, 70 yards, and a touchdown. And then he got a bunch of passing game work as well. That passing game work was so fantastic for us.
Yeah, that's the most important part, because 19 carries is his single game high, just 3 games played, but still a single game high, not super efficient. I don't care. Like, that's under 4 yards a carry, and that's totally fine if he's going to get any sort of passing game utilization. Now, is he going to get 6 catches a week? Probably not. But as Mike told us all week last week, this is one of the pass-heaviest offenses in the NFL.
Yep.
That can trickle down to the running back. So stock back up for Omarion Hampton. Certainly feels like the kind of guy that is due for 20-ish opportunities a game. He is a very talented player. The Chargers continue to be excellent. 3 huge wins. I mean, their resume is excellent. They have the best resume. They have one of the 3 best resumes in the NFL right now, along with the Bills and the Eagles, in my opinion.
And they've been playing divisional games. Like, they're
All 3
getting
in the
divisional
division.
wins.
Yep.
Like, that. This is huge for them.
Yeah.
And then it just breeds the confidence.
That should be illegal. You shouldn't start the season with 3 divisional games. Something about that just feels
Weird.
wrong.
Well, they'll definitely end the season with 1 as well, as we know that's how the schedule works. But
You got one
the Chargers
more,
have
too?
been great. But yes, my last one here, and this was sent after the 1 o'clock games. Omarion Hampton and the Najee Harris injury changes things a little bit here, because I do believe Hampton is the running back that you want the most out of the rookie class. But prior to that taking place, I was saying to myself, Quinshon Judkins is the rookie running back that I want the most in fantasy football.
I sent the same thing to our producer. That's amazing.
Now, again, it's going to change, but this was really coming off the heels of the Ashton Genty performance as well.
Correct.
Where Genty, here's the good news: Ashton Genty had a career high 63 rushing yards yesterday, but Quinshon Judkins was excellent for the Cleveland Browns.
What was the good news there?
Yeah, I know. Career high.
Career high, 63.
Yeah.
Okay, got it. Okay.
Career
got
high.
it.
But yes, Judkins was really, really good yesterday. And the snaps yesterday for the Browns, 33 for Quinshon Judkins, 23 combined for Jerome Ford and Dylan Sampson, who, again, Sampson, 1 touch. Remember that week 1 8-catch performance from
Everybody's
Dylan
like,
Sampson?
oh, what about Dylan
That is a thing of the past. Well, not a ton of receiving work for Quinshon Judkins. He's just so impressive. Like, we talk about how, and I'll get to some of the numbers in a minute, Ashton Genty's offensive line is not great. And the same thing, I think, can be said with the injuries to the Chargers offensive line, who also lost Mekhi Becton to a concussion yesterday. They have individual good talents, but that group is really impacted by injuries. The Browns had some question marks along the offensive line coming into the season. I mean, left tackle was a big spot for them to figure out how they were going to handle it. And Judkins has been great after contact so far. He's such a powerful runner. But we can't stop talking about Ashton Genty. Ashton Genty now has 144 rushing yards this season. He has 145 rushing yards after contact.
I was just going to ask that. That was my next question. Like, there is no opportunity for him to get past the line of scrimmage.
He has
without
2
getting hit.
carries this season where he gained 5 or more yards before contact. You know, I've been seeing this, and I really am not trying to be unkind to either player that I'm going to mention in a moment here, but I've seen a lot of people that have been responding to anything related to Ashton Genty on social media of, this guy is Trent Richardson 2.0. I've got news for everybody right here. For fantasy purposes, we would love Trent Richardson's season right now. We would love his rookie season, because he started off as RB. I went back and checked this. 2011, Trent Richardson was RB 40 in his first game. He went on to have 10 games as a top 11 running back that season. 10 games as a top 11. That would be elite.
Yeah.
You'd say to yourself, that's awesome for Ashton Genty. That's totally worth it. He had like 5 finishes as RB6 or better. We would be saying nothing about Ashton Genty if he was giving us that kind of upside. And he was getting way more involvement in the passing game. Guys, he now has a total of 3 receiving yards. He had 0 targets yesterday to Ashton Genty. We can sit here and talk about a lot of factors, but for fantasy football purposes, we're 3 games in. You have to put the name value aside. He will be outside my top 20 running backs in week 4.
Gosh, that's gross. That does not feel good with where we drafted Ashton.
But I mean, it's just a stone cold fact, right?
It's just the truth.
Like, he is this is Jordan Mason in a worse offense.
Yep.
A lot of carries, potentially. We're not sure on the passing game utilization week in and week out. He has 1 touchdown in 3 games. I still think Ashton Genty looks the part when he gets those opportunities, but this goes back to the philosophical debate that ensued for the months prior to the draft. Do you take a running back at 6? Is he going to be able to be the best player on your offense right away? I mean, we haven't talked about Brock Bowers and his struggles, but yeah, that Raiders offense, a mess. They get the Bears next week. Maybe things get better at home, but he was brutal once again yesterday for fantasy.
It did not feel
6.3
good.
points.
I feel like you're getting to a point where you're saying to yourself emotionally, like, do I really keep starting this guy over someone that maybe is a little bit farther down the list, that's scoring more fantasy points but doesn't have the name value or the draft pedigree? It's going to be a conversation. All right. We're going to talk some trends, things that we are recognizing here heading out of week 3. I know Monday Night Football still needs to be able to play, but knowing that most of the week has wrapped up, Stephania, I want to start with you. We're trending. What are some trends that you feel like you've noticed through the first 3 weeks of the season?
Well, we touched on it already. It was just the Falcons looked terrible. And Michael Penix was a dud for the 2nd week in a row. I don't even know what to make of this, because if you look at the roster, you look at the talent, we saw glimpses at the very end of last season of like, okay, Michael Penix with more time with these pass catching weapons, and not to mention Bijan Robinson, who can do it all. This is going to be a good option. And they were playing Carolina yesterday, so we thought this is a great streaming opportunity for Michael Penix Jr. You know who lost the matchup where they started Michael Penix Jr.?
Probably Stephania.
That'd be me.
Yeah.
So like, what is going on with Atlanta, and can we expect anything more out of that offense? I don't think I can answer that question. If I'm being perfectly honest, you know how many games were on at that time? And I just can't. I want to go back and watch that game. I don't really, but I do, because I want to see the things that in more detail in terms of what's being set up and where things are going wrong. But just every time I turn around, I was like, this is happening with Carolina? Like, where are these players?
Shout out to the Panthers defense, and the anti-shout out to the Falcons.
For the Falcons, Bijan is still running back 4 right now.
He's awesome.
No
issues with Bijan.
He's getting a ton of volume, but I need more from Drake London. I need less from Darnell Mooney. Not that like I need less from him, but
I'm okay with Mooney.
I'm okay with him. You always knew, because last year he showed us a lot too. Like Darnell Mooney, that to me was this.
Yeah, but we don't. But we didn't draft Drake London is a wide receiver.
I know, but you probably
one B.
What I would say is that we want more from Drake London. It doesn't have to be that we get more from Drake London and less of Darnell Mooney. Like, I think there's, to me, this
offense doesn't look like it can support 2 pass catchers.
I just need more of Drake London. That's what I need.
Yeah.
I agree with you.
You say, but that's the problem. Yeah. That if it can't support 2 pass catchers, because that's not an offense that should be the case. Kirk Cousins was supporting more than 2 pass catchers last year before he
when they
ended
played
up
the Bucks, especially.
Yes, that's true.
Yeah. Okay, but still,
no, I'm just saying, like 10 touchdowns in 2 games was amazing. Yeah.
We got to find a way to be able to get this Falcons offense back on track.
There's a way to distribute the ball.
Yes, I'm with you on that.
It's not happening.
My trend is Rome Odunze isn't a trend, he's a lifestyle. And we're currently living our best life with Rome Odunze in our fantasy life.
I thought you were going to use Tyler's Rome with Odunze.
Which is great, though. It wasn't.
Really good,
Only 3 catches for 62 yards and a touchdown. Actually, a little bit less volume. No one won the lottery yesterday because Caleb Williams spread the wealth around in this Bears offense, right? And Luther Burden was able to find some stuff. However,
yay for Caleb, too. Not getting sacked.
Caleb was unbelievable. And we can talk about him in a second. But Rome Odunze, clearly the wide receiver 1 of this team, has 11 more targets than DJ Moore through the first 3 weeks. The chemistry between him and the quarterback looks great. If you drafted Rome Odunze in those middle rounds, you have found yourself a gem for the rest of the season.
Somebody say that? Did
someone
say that they thought he would be over DJ Moore? Did somebody say that the vibes with DJ Moore weren't great?
That's a great question.
I don't know. I might want to go back and look at that. I have Rome Odunze in like over half my fantasy leagues.
Then
I love what I'm
thrilled.
doing. This is paying off well now.
That can help counteract
he can't
Drake London
overcome
volume.
the Michael Penix Jr.
There you go.
Disaster.
He leads all Bears wide receivers in snaps, routes, targets, receptions, receiving yards, receiving touchdowns, end zone targets, and fantasy points. That's every stat. That's all the stats.
He is the 2nd highest scoring wide receiver in all fantasy right now.
And it seems like
Amon-Ra hasn't played yet tonight.
Correct.
Zay Flowers as well. So a couple guys who have been really good, but he's been exceptional. He's been brilliant. I love to see a player paying off, and the Bears were just awesome offensively yesterday.
It was a classic Ben Johnson situation.
He's wide receiver too, but he is not the best wide receiver in all fantasy football. Neither by scoring, or by, to me, like value week in and week out. That's Puka Nacua.
Yeah,
Puka Nacua is the best wide receiver in fantasy football, especially with the uncertainty of.
So fun to watch.
I mean, when you take CeeDee Lamb and the injury into account, when you take Justin Jefferson and Jamar Chase and their quarterbacks into account as well, then to me the answer is Puka Nacua, who he has no touchdowns this year, and yet he is still the highest scoring wide receiver in all of fantasy with 73.5 fantasy points. Yeah, so
that's actually a really awesome stat, because it's so many players are touchdown dependent, and he never was.
DK
but the
Metcalf.
fact he hasn't had any touchdowns.
2nd in the NFL in targets, trailing only. Can you guess the answer through 3 games? Good job if you can. This is a good little trivia. I'll give it 15 seconds, and then we'll give you the answer. Who has the most targets in the NFL through 3 games? The number is 37. Can you name the player? He had, I believe, 14 yesterday.
Yes, I can.
Okay.
It's Chris Olave.
It is Chris Olave.
Well, that's good. I wouldn't have gotten that.
Yeah, Chris Olaves are just a little bit less efficient because his quarterback is not Matthew Stafford. Yeah. But he does Puka Nacua 6 more catches than any other wide receiver. It's very early, but he is on pace for 164 receiving yards. The man is Brilliant.
Shout out to his quarterback, too. Remember when people were worried about the value of Puka Nacua because of Matthew Stafford?
His back.
For his back and his almost 40-year-old self?
Yeah.
How you feeling about that now?
Seems like fears have subsided.
Did you avoid Puka Nacua in drafts because you were worried about this?
Say what?
Because you know what? Shame on you.
I wound up with one team that has Puka Nacua and Jonathon Taylor. I think it's, I always adopt teams during the year, like they move up the pecking order. That one's my favorite.
That one's moving up right now. Yeah, that checks out.
Anything else?
Stephania, give us one more trend. I think we each got one more.
No,
You got more?
You're
I
good?
got one.
I got one more.
Okay, what is it?
JSN proved to us that he can be a top 10 wide receiver, even with Sam Darnold under center.
I mean, let me just, I don't want to derail the takeaway and spin it all the way to week 4, but just snap reaction.
Give it to me.
I give you 2 names and you tell me which player you'd prefer to start.
Okay.
We're starting both, but if you just had to pick one.
Okay.
Jackson Smith and Jigba
Yes.
or Justin Jefferson in week 4.
I would rather start JSN.
JSN.
Yeah.
Jackson Smith and Jigba or Jamar Chase.
I would rather start JSN.
Pretty crazy, right? I mean, it's...
Yeah, yeah. I guess
Again,
that
like,
is a hard one
I
to
know,
say
it's-
Jamar Chase
listen.
because at least you know he's leading the team in target as is JSN.
Yeah.
But you're like, if Jake Browning had a good game, Jamar Chase could have an amazing game.
last week,
right.
Yeah. So,
But yes,
you know,
it's close. And the fact that it's close is ridiculous.
These are kind of silly arguments because in no circumstances is somebody like, yeah, you know what, I either don't have room for Jamar Chase or Jackson Smith and Jigba, but it's just a sign of how far JSN has climbed and the impact of backup quarterbacks.
He is wide receiver 4 on the season. He has a 38.9% target share. Jackson Smith and Jigba has more fantasy points than every other Seattle Seahawks wide receiver combined on the season. Yeah. It is clear here is the number 1 target.
Who are their other receivers?
Cooper Kupp, Jake Bobo,
Torrey Horton. Obviously, Jake. I do think it's a little bit. I don't know why this did not lead SportsCenter or Get Up this morning, but the Seahawks are undefeated with Jake Bobo on the field this year.
Yes.
They're winless without him. Again, I'm just pointing it out.
Yep. All the fears that you potentially had if you drafted JSN of like, can Sam Darnold really like give me a guy that's going to be this good? Through 3 weeks, the answer feels like very much yes. If you're going to give him that much volume, I'm in.
Sam's fine. Like, people need to just get over that.
Agreed.
Sam Darnold is a solid NFL quarterback.
Yep.
People, I get
Also,
it.
growth, right? Like,
Yes.
part of the benefit of Sam Darnold being who he is now is because he was with Kevin O'Connell. He also had a good stint with the 49ers. You know, I think those stops along the way helped him become who he is and the confidence he has in Seattle.
Absolutely.
Last trend for me, and I know that Daniel sees it the same way, is that Daniel Jones, top 10 quarterback right now.
Yep.
Good Lord. So, the thing about Danny Dimes, and Stephania and I were having this conversation on the way over here, is it might be like week 16 before some people are like, I don't know, man. Like, he might have one of those moments that Danny Dimes tends to have, right? He's very turnover prone. He's a guy that has been very inconsistent. Instead, he's got 3 straight games of lights out football. He had yet another rushing touchdown yesterday. They whooped the Titans. The
I was
Titans
shocked,
were obviously in for a long year, but
I thought the Titans defense had been playing pretty well.
they had been.
So I thought this was going to
Against
be
the Broncos and the Rams?
I thought this was going to be a bigger test.
Agreed.
For Danny Dimes,
Yep.
and he made it look like it was easy.
I think in 2 out of the 3 games he's played, you'd say to yourself, that was a test going into the game that I thought was difficult. Last week, it was the Broncos.
and
Yesterday,
Titans.
it was the Titans.
Yeah.
The Dolphins
Not a
would not
test.
classify it difficult. That being said, he's been excellent. They're using him as a runner, which is so vital to fantasy upside. So he's been the best value at any quarterback because he was undrafted and he was great again yesterday.
He only had 15.8 fantasy points, but in a game in which he found the end zone with his legs, was able to get in the end zone with his arm. I think he found Michael Pittman to be able to get in the end zone. And then they dominated everywhere else. You just didn't need to use him. So if you look at it, you're like, wait a minute. He had 15 fantasy points. How is he a set it and forget it? It's like, trust me, with the way the game played out, he did everything that he was expected to do in this game.
There are a lot
He
of
was
quarterbacks
unbelievable.
that haven't been great. So.
Yeah. All right. Let's talk about some week 3 studs and duds. We're going to start.
Yeah, and a reminder on studs and duds, like sometimes these are just like, we're mentioning them. We don't take away on these players other than this funny random game we have.
Trey Tucker had his Juwan Jennings game this year. Is what
Number
just
1
happened.
in all of fantasy football so far in week 3.
40 fantasy points, 3 touchdowns for Trey Tucker.
Sick.
I feel like Juwan Jennings deserves a touch more credit, right? Like,
Sure.
Juwan's stacked, like he was good the rest of the way.
Which one of them has more 20 fantasy point games in their career, Trey Tucker or Juwan Jennings?
the way you asked it,
I
probably Trey
know,
Tucker.
I know.
Yeah, but
It's close. Like
Juwan Jennings
has
if
more.
if Juwan Jennings is playing in week 4, you have a pretty different perception of him versus
Absolutely,
Trey Tucker,
100%.
Right? Yeah.
But coming into when he hit this last year, we didn't have Juwan Jennings sitting on the pedestal that he's sitting on now for us, right?
Yeah,
So
fair.
Trey Tucker, I think unfortunately this came at the expense of Brock Bowers. Brock Bowers only had 5 targets in this game,
Back-to-back duds.
and it has not been great.
I'm not convinced he's 100%. They ran him out there last week.
Yeah.
And it was questionable Monday Night Football. What are we going to do? And he just didn't look himself. And I don't know.
Well, shout
I'm
out
not
to Trey
convinced.
Tucker, but it didn't really help very many of us, I don't think.
Shout out to Hunter Henry as well. 29 fantasy points, a pair of receiving touchdowns. I feel like Hunter gives us one of these a year.
Yes, he
Maybe
does.
not 29 fantasy points, but like Hunter Henry is a totally solid tight end.
Yep.
Totally.
Like just
That's
rock
the best
solid,
word for him.
like, maybe somewhere between the
Consistent.
12th and 14th best tight end in the NFL. We'll talk more about Drake May later on this week. Just a disaster loss for the Patriots yesterday. Drake May, very much in that top 10 quarterback conversation going forward, and one of his preferred targets is Hunter Henry.
Drake May looks more poised than you would expect him to be for being so young in his career. Hunter Henry to me is like, well, yeah, I mean, but
The turnovers.
compared to some of the veterans out there,
Sure, yeah.
pretty good. And also, Hunter Henry got up and limped a little bit at one point, and I was like, oh no, because that's been sort of a bugaboo for him is the injury. But if he's healthy, he's probably the tight end I would most want to stream if I had, a top tight end that was going on a bye.
Garrett Wilson was not impacted in a negative way by Tyrod Taylor being the quarterback. In fact, 13 targets, 10 receptions, 84 yards, and a touchdown. He was the clear pass catcher in this game. Mason Taylor, the only one that really seemed like they got involved. Garrett Wilson, still a man.
Got a good chance to be right there with Jackson Smith and Jigba, maybe Puka Nacua for target share leaders by the end of the year. It will be probably fewer targets than those guys because of the Jets offense, but he was excellent for the second time in 3 weeks was Garrett Wilson.
In that same game, Stephania, on the other side, Mike Evans ended up getting hurt.
Yes, and Mike Evans left with a hamstring injury. If you saw the camera follow him into the tunnel, took his helmet and heaved it. He was limping, walking off. Like, there are certain things that tell you this is not like, oh, it just tightened up on him. It was funny because, not funny, haha, but Todd Bowles at the end called it, he said, as far as he knew, he tweaked his hamstring. I think when people hear that, they're like, a hamstring tweak, like, oh, that's no big deal. When the guy is limping and is throwing his helmet, and it's somebody who's had hamstring injuries in the past, as recently as last year, that caused him to miss 3 games plus a bye week, and the player reacts like that, it's not nothing. And that's a big deal because obviously their entire receiving core in Tampa Bay is up in the air.
Yeah.
We'll talk about Chris Godwin more later this week. Maybe he comes back, but it's not like he comes back to a full complement of snaps, even if he's back this week. So I would be making plans though, because I don't think, especially last year, Mike Evans tried to play through a hamstring injury. Yeah. And that's what cost him ultimately multiple games.
It feels like all 3 of those pass catchers. Emeka Ibuka came in and he was limited throughout the week.
56% of the snaps.
Yep.
Shefty told us that was coming yesterday, and he's Shefty. He was money in the bank.
As he is. Field, who else you got that you want to give a little shout out to?
Just 2 random ones. I'll do this in reverse order. Torrey Horton, who we just mentioned a moment ago, had a long punt return as well. 3 catches, 32 yards, and a touchdown for Torrey Horton yesterday. So he was buzzing during preseason.
Yep.
And I don't think we're quite to the point where we need to be talking about him as anything close to a starter, except maybe the deepest of leagues. That being said, if there's room in this offense for a second wide receiver, maybe it's not Cooper Kupp. Maybe it is instead Torrey Horton, their 5th round pick out of Colorado State.
I think there's a small drum beat there. I think we will get to a point where it's
small drum beat.
Yep.
Luke McCaffrey, Christian's younger brother.
The other.
14.6 fantasy points. To be clear, much of this took place late in the game on I think it was a 42-yard touchdown pass. So 1 plus 4.2 is 5.2 plus. So 14.6 fantasy points. 11.2 of those came on just 1 reception. But he's notable because
Terry McLaurin left the game early with a quad injury, so keep your eye on that. He came out originally called questionable to return, never does come back into the game, ruled out. So if there's no Terry McLaurin available, then maybe we see a little more Luke McCaffrey.
For those out there, I have Terry McLaurin on a couple teams, and it did not impact the outcome of the game that I was playing, but Terry McLaurin definitely scored on that diving touchdown.
Oh, he totally scored.
And it was ruled a touchdown. Then they reviewed it and they said it wasn't a touchdown.
I didn't get that.
Definitely scored. So if you're out there, just want to say shout out.
Yeah. All right, Phil, let's kick off some duds, and we can be quick through this one as well.
Let's just get through it and talk about whether it matters or not. Breece Hall had 9.2 fantasy points. So Breece Hall, obviously week 1 was really good. This Jets offense, not so great, probably at full strength, and definitely not without Justin Fields, but Hall's still on that RB2 radar for me.
I was going to say, if you're the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and you come into that game with a backup quarterback, who are you saying, you know who we need to stop? Yeah. I'll let Tyrod Taylor beat me. I'm going to stop the running backs.
Yep. Ladd McConkey, this one has my attention. 3.7 fantasy points for Ladd.
This is a problem.
Under 10 last week. And it feels like right now, again, just like we could have a conversation. What is the pecking order of the Chargers' top 3 wideouts? Because I do not think...
Ladd McConkey is a piece of this offense. He is not a focal point like we drafted him to be.
Totally. No two ways about that. So we're going to have a much more thoughtful conversation throughout the rest of the week.
Our rankings this week
Johnson
will be interesting.
Leapfrogged him or not, but Ladd has definitely seen his stock dip precipitously. Alvin Kamara had just 6.6 fantasy points. They are a mess. They got absolutely smothered against the Seahawks. It's all receiving value for Alvin Kamara the rest of the way because I'm just not so sure they can afford to run the ball because they're going to be playing from behind all the time, and they don't score touchdowns.
We just did the trending segment. Like the one trend that you can count on for the entirety of the season is the Saints will be behind and having to throw a bunch all game long.
That's why Chris Olave with those 37 targets is going to have some value in PPR scoring. And then Juwan Johnson has maintained sort of like top 10-ish value for tight ends. We mentioned Saquon off the top, 9.5 fantasy points. Again, what are you going to do? Even Superman forgets his cape every once in a while. And then finally, Trevor Lawrence, under 8 fantasy points yesterday. We didn't talk a ton about Trevor as like this guy could break out and become a quarterback that you're going to be counting on this year. But there was at least some hope given the Liam Cohen effect and Brian Thomas Jr. plus Travis Hunter. He's just been bad. Trevor is just
weird going on over there. Because every time I looked over on that screen, I did not like the body language that I saw going on in that game.
I just think it's fair to categorize Trevor as an enigma in terms of talent right now.
Do you think?
Okay.
Let me ask you this question. If you have Travis Hunter, should he be anywhere near your starting lineup, or is he a bench until further notice?
More defense than offense yesterday.
Yeah.
If that's going to be the case, then you can't play him in fantasy. You just can't.
Yeah.
Now, if he's an every down
also, the box
receiver,
score should tell you can't play him.
It was really bad. I mean, Brian Thomas Jr., because of the volume, feels like you have to play him, but it doesn't. None of it feels good if you're starting someone from the Jaguars pass catching group. By the way, I'm just going to say this really quickly after watching that Sunday Night Football game. Travis Kelce's washed. He does not look like he is name value only at this point. Torrey Horton, Hunter Renfrow, Kayshon Boutte, they all have more fantasy points this year than Travis Kelce does. And that's with no Xavier Worthy and no Rashee Rice.
Correct.
Not good.
That Chiefs offense, they won yesterday, but man, do they need Xavier Worthy and Rashee Rice. We know Rashee Rice will come back in week 7. We'll see if we can get Xavier Worthy back in week 4. Sounds like there's at least a chance on Worthy next Sunday.
But when you get him back...
Who knows?
He's not going to be Xavier Worthy like 1.0.
All right, let's talk about Monday Night Football. Detroit Lions taking on
I'm pumped to you, man.
The Baltimore Ravens. I'm pretty pumped right now. Right now, I need 16.6 fantasy points from Jared Goff in order to not come in last place in our starts of the week. Mike has his projection at 16.4.
Wow, really?
So I feel like Mike might have done that on purpose. There's a lot of things that I am watching in this game specifically. Stephania, you and I are in a matchup.
I was just going to say, aren't you projected to beat me?
I need 33 points from Lamar Jackson and Jahmyr Gibbs and the Lions defense in order to beat you. So we'll see how that one works out.
I need that to not work out.
One of the things
you get 32 points and a win.
And
I'll take the fantasy win. That'd be fair.
I would be all right.
I'll trade you.
You give me a win over the Ravens, and I will give up a fantasy win.
Yeah.
You're welcome.
One of the things that I'm watching in this game, just in general, is Jamison Williams. He has not been the volume guy that we kind of felt like they were speaking into existence during the offseason, right? It felt like they were going to be able to find ways to get him more involved. When he does get the football, he is electric. We know that. But I would love to see, especially in a game that they think is going to be high scoring, do we see a little bit more JMO, some fireworks on that side? He's someone I think needs to touch the ball more in this Lions offense.
Yeah, I mean, I know that some people have already said we're done here, but Mark Andrews is kind of like now or never.
That's my same thing. I was like, proof of life.
Yeah.
Need to see
because
it.
Isaiah Likely could be back next week.
Yeah.
And it'll be a slow roll for Isaiah Likely. Still, Isaiah Likely coming back probably doesn't propel Mark Andrews' value forward. It probably takes it a step backwards, and I'm not sure there is room for it to go backwards right now. So Mark Andrews, who has just 2 catches and 3 fantasy points so far this season, do we get anything? And I mean anything.
That's why Proof of Life. So our friend Kyle Safi gave me some numbers because I was like, this is what I need. He is been targeted on 28.6% of his red zone routes this season. And he said last year, with a 28.3% target rate of his within the red zone, he scored 11 touchdowns. So it's not the targeting in the red zone that's the problem. And granted, small sample size only through 2 weeks, but it's the fact that there's no efficiency there. And Mark Andrews had a drop last week that was bad. And I wonder if we'd be saying anything different if he had a score. We'd be like, well, at least he's catching a pass in the end zone. But they're playing a lot of the long game. You know, their short game hasn't been there that much. So he's running routes, but he's not really being looked for, and he's not really being counted on. Remember when Lamar Jackson used to throw to him? It was like, that's his safety blanket. It was Mark Andrews was that guy. I don't feel like he needs it anymore.
No. Last year, I feel like we saw this. It's part of why he fell in our draft process, but only 55 catches last year. And then 11 of them go for touchdowns, which really elevated what felt like the production from Mark Andrews. So it's going to be an interesting one here in this one. Do you guys have anything hanging on this game here in Monday Night Football? I've got a big one against you, Stephania.
So I have a bunch of teams. I have Lamar Jackson in the war room. Don't I? I do.
Yes, you do.
Yes, you do.
Yeah.
That's what happens when you play in so many
Too many leagues.
But I need Lamar Jackson. Oh, what am I going to do? Because if he has a crazy
I need Lamar Jackson. I know.
I'm going to have to go home and do some math. Which is hard for me, but I need to figure out exactly how many points, and I'm going to fire up a little text to
Monday
Lamar
Night
and tell
Football.
him when he needs to take a knee.
This is when you do start doing those mental math things where it's like, I need exactly 16.8 to 17.2 fantasy points because any more than that. By the way, I'm going to say this. And this will be the last thing. I'll close it after this. Because I am playing against Stephania, I've got Lamar Jackson, Jahmyr Gibbs, and the Lions defense. Would you guys ever consider, because you have a quarterback going against your defense, pulling them out? Or do you think that's just not the spirit of the game, guys? I always have to leave
scoring in that league?
We do have negative scoring in this league.
I think you got to consider it. I always play all my guys, but there are people that I would say do consider it, and this would be a circumstance to consider it.
Yeah, it seems like it would be. I don't know.
Oh, no.
Let's just hope that we get a Lions dub, and we'll let the fantasy chips fall as they may.
I'm terrible in our show league, by the way, and I'm going to blame it on you. Do you have we have 2 IR slots, don't we?
We do.
Both of mine are filled, and I have other guys who could go on them.
Yeah,
that's how banged up my team in this league.
Walking wounded. Yeah. Day to day.
We don't call you the queen of the injuries for nothing, Stephania, unfortunately. We just wish that it wasn't happening to your squad.
I know.
All right, that's going to do it for us today. Thank you so much for hanging out with us. Don't forget to love each other, be kind to yourself, and have fun watching Monday Night Football. We'll see you tomorrow.